Here we are.
Lovett would have been here, but he
had a bad poke bowl.
It turns out when you purchase the cheapest fish possible,
and have it delivered to your door
with an ice cream scoop, and then allow it to sit in a Prius for a half an hour.
Sometimes bad things happen.
So here we are.
But we're here. Tommy,
you win.
Before we'll take a bunch of questions, we should start by talking about the spectacle in the cabinet room in the White House just now. Trump, Democratic lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, they were all talking about gun control, and it was as if it was the first moment Trump had ever heard anything about gun control policy and politics.
Yeah. The look on his face is like a freshman philosophy class. So you're just like, holy shit, like mind-blowing.
He is, as we always say, the low-information voter who became president.
Blank slate. The press is, it was a very interesting event if you think his words have any meaning, which I don't. We all remember the extraordinary hour he spent talking to lawmakers about DACA,
right,
which resulted in him changing his position 15 times, getting overruled by his own staff like Stephen Miller and doing fucking nothing. But
he started by saying he loves the DACA recipients, and just today his campaign is selling American Dreamers hats, so he really came a long way on that one.
Yeah, it's so offensive. But at this event, he said things like, we should take away the guns first and deal with due process second, which is the literal NRA fever dream.
Mass confiscation of guns from President Donald Trump.
Cool.
Just remember that one.
He told Dianne Feinstein to work with Manchin and Toomey on their background checks legislation to add a new assault weapons ban to it, that would be big news. That would be a big thing. He said he's going to deal with bump stocks. Don't even waste your time writing up bump more paragraphs.
We'll get rid of bump stocks.
We're getting rid of bump stocks. So that's good.
Raising the age.
Yeah, you talked about raising the age for purchasing long guns from 21 to 18, which is something that had been floated and then walked back via Axios, right, I believe.
By a lot of, because Republicans in Congress. I mean, the point of all this is Trump, a bunch of Democratic lawmakers in the meeting suggested what sound like common sense gun control measures to President Trump, and because they sound like common sense, and he is just a low information voter who doesn't pay attention to politics, and gets his news from Fox, which isn't really news at all, he sat there and said, sure, yeah, that all sounds great, let's do it.
Yeah.
Specifically, what could happen here is, he was talking to Pat Toomey, Republican senator from Pennsylvania, Joe Manchin, Democratic senator from West Virginia. They had a bill in 2013 after Newtown, after the shooting at Sandy Hook, that Barack Obama pushed very heavily for. Toomey's a very conservative senator. Manchin's pretty conservative himself. And that was comprehensive universal background checks. Still probably not as far as some of us would have liked for it to go on background checks, but pretty strong. Basically closes the gun show loophole where a lot of people buy guns on the internet or at gun shows and make sure that they are subject to background checks as well. So Trump today is basically telling them, what happened to your bill? Why didn't you get your bill done?
Didn't you guys mention you had a bill at one point? The only hope we have of Trump backing gun control laws is if he thinks he can do something that Obama didn't get done and talk shit about it.
Which is clearly what he thought in that meeting.
Everyone
today.
Write him a letter saying, only you can do this, sir. Obama could never get this done.
What was so amazing about him saying that in that meeting, though, is those fucking snakes, John Cornyn and Marco Rubio, are on either side of Donald Trump. Two people who voted against Manchin Toomey in 2013. So everyone knows, in 2013, when Manchin Toomey tried to pass this bill, it got 55 votes in the Senate. It was 5 short of 60. We had very few Republicans except for Toomey, McCain, maybe a couple others who voted for the bill. Most every Democrat voted for it except for Heidi Heitkamp and a few other Democratic senators who are not there anymore. So we got really close to 60 votes, but just about every Republican in the fucking Senate was against it. So most people think nothing comes of this meeting, nothing happens. The White House will probably walk back Trump's comments or McConnell, Ryan, and other Senate people will say, and House people will say, no way we can pass this, right?
Yeah, I mean, John Cornyn is the most cynical person in the Senate. He's disgusting. So he's probably already, thinking through ways to make sure this proposal never sees the light of day. Paul Ryan has already punted and said that the Senate should start any legislative movement. So whatever. But anyway, it's pressure on them. It's pressure on Republicans to do something, which is nice. It's nice when Trump distances himself from these guys, especially when we're going to be running against these clowns in the midterms.
He also he told Steve Scalise when Scalise was talking about concealed carry reciprocity, no way. Just said forget that. Don't put it in the bill. Which is great because it's an awful idea where if your state has super strong gun laws, someone who got a permit in a state with very weak gun laws, which says you can have a gun no matter if you're a domestic abuser, stalker, teenager, or whatever, you have to recognize a permit from another state. So it would be an awful idea. But Scalise was like, yeah, let's put it in the bill with background checks. And Trump's like, no, it'll never pass. Weird. It was it was good TV, but like, you know.
Keeps you guessing,
but no one get too excited. All right, let's take some questions.
What do we got?
Kim Fritz asks, what's the status on DACA?
Go for it.
It does not look like it is passing in the House or the Senate right now because Paul Ryan refuses to put anything on the floor that would protect the Dreamers unless it also cuts legal immigration to this country to its lowest levels since the early 1900s. And of course, we fell about 5 or 6 votes short of passing something that a compromise that would have protected Dreamers in the Senate. So where are we? Basically, another court ruled last week that so the Supreme Court last week decided they're not going to take a DACA case right now, which means that as of right now, the March 5th deadline that we had talked about for so long is no longer operable because the courts have said that while we wait for this lawsuit about DACA, about Trump ending DACA to move through the courts, people can go apply for work permits. So if you are a dreamer, if you're someone who could qualify for DACA right now and your permit is running out, you should go apply for another permit right now because right now they're in limbo because the court has not decided this and it doesn't seem like the Supreme Court will decide this for a while. So we're basically waiting for an appeals court right now. So this is something like, you know, Trump's probably excited about this and the Republicans because they don't have to do anything. Now they're not going to get held responsible and they don't have to deport anyone and get the shit for that. But also, Dreamers aren't protected by law right now. So that's where it is right now.
Not ideal.
J.D. Scholten, who is running against Steve King in Iowa. We love that. Democrat running against Steve King. How do Democrats in the Midwest combat the coastal urban stereotypes? Tommy, what do you think? You lived in Iowa.
Let me say
How did you combat this urban stereotype when you were there?
A couple thoughts. One, Steve King is one of the worst people in the world. Certainly all of Washington. He's overtly racist. He has been for a long time. The Republican Party was racist before Donald Trump. He said that Al-Qaeda would dance in the streets when Barack Obama was elected. The fact that they never distanced themselves from that piece of garbage says a lot about the party and kind of plowed the path for where we are today. I spent a lot of time in southwestern Iowa. It's rural. It's different than Los Angeles or Atlanta or Chicago. So I don't know that there's some truth to the rural-urban divide. Like they're different places with different people, and I don't think that there's necessarily a need to combat stereotypes or like personal views that Democrats in Boston are different than Democrats in Southwest Iowa. I think you have to run a race on issues that reflect the values of your district and run strong and be honest about what you believe in and fight it out.
Yeah. Remember Obama always used to say to us, like when he would go down to Southern Illinois, which and in Iowa in the early days, and he said, I met people who were Republicans and people in rural areas, and they liked me because it wasn't the caricature of me that they saw on Fox News or that they saw in the media, and they didn't know that caricature yet, And so if you're a candidate running, you just got to go out and meet people and don't worry about like what's on the news and national stereotypes.
JD's not going to get a lot of Trump fans voting for him, not going to get a lot of Steve King fans, but there's a lot of reasonable people that are living their lives that want government to do a better job that might vote for him.
You go meet those people and you show them who you are, and then you don't have to worry about the stereotypes. Yeah. Mia asks, I've seen a lot of people assert that Obama didn't do anything about guns when he was in office. How would you respond to people that make that argument?
I would respond with political realities, which are that Obama really, really tried to push common sense gun reform legislation multiple times.
Manchin Toomey was the last one.
Yeah. And to the people who say, well, why didn't you do it in 2009 when he passed the Affordable Care Act? Just because you have 60 votes to support healthcare legislation doesn't mean you have 60 votes to support gun control. He did not. It's just a reality. The way we get where we want to be on this is to win more elections. It's the only way.
We had I went back and looked this up because I was thinking about this the other day. We had a 60 votes in the Senate from April 2009 until February of 2010, because we had to wait for Arlen Specter to change parties.
Right.
Then we had to wait for Al Franken's election to be decided because it wasn't until summer.
Right.
And then Ted Kennedy passed away and Scott Brown won the seat. So it was in the middle of healthcare, in the middle of saving the economy. And
then we still had like Mark Pryor and like all these senators
all
who
these
not in
never
a
do
million
anything
years
about
were going to
guns.
vote on gun control.
But the first time there was a sort of a mass shooting on Obama's watch around in Tucson when Gabby Giffords was shot. From that moment on, that was 2011 maybe, he pushed gun control all the time, as much as he could. He ended up also signing 23 executive actions on gun control as well when Congress wouldn't do anything. But I always say, like, Manchin Toomey, if you get Joe Manchin, who literally like ran for office running an ad where he shot a copy of the climate change bill. If you have him and Pat Toomey, conservative senator from Western Pennsylvania, pushing gun control legislation, and that doesn't work, and if that's still too liberal for some people, it's not Barack Obama's problem at that point. If those two guys are passing or can't get gun control done,
it's a Republican Party that's bought and sold by the NRA and a bunch of Democrats who are scared shitless of gun voters and the NRA pushing them to vote against them. And we need to fix both of those problems.
Anna asks, what's the deal with Jeff Sessions asking the Inspector General to investigate FISA abuses? Is this a result of the Nunes memo?
I don't know. It's probably the result. It's a very good question. It's probably the result of broad-based political pressure on Sessions from his president's Twitter feed to notorious moron Devin Nunes's various memos and other verbal diarrhea that he spews on the body politic on a daily basis. It was interesting that Trump doesn't think that it's sufficient. Is already attacking him on it this morning. Like, poor Jeff Sessions.
You know that this was something where
unrequited love.
Sessions was like, this is completely bullshit. Devin Nunes is kind of crazy, but I've got to keep Trump off my ass. And so I might as well send an Inspector General to go and investigate this, and then he'll go off for months, and then that'll be that.
Right, and
that's probably what happened.
Trump just hammered him on it.
Yeah, didn't save him at all. Josh Collins asks, what advice do you give high school students like me who are considering walking out but might face...
Breaking news.
Hope Hicks is to resign as White House communications director.
Whoa! Thanks, guys.
Breaking news. Hope Hicks resigning in coming
Tanya
weeks.
and Elijah and Melanie just giving us their breaking news sounds to the best of their ability.
In every White House, there's some staffer that's close with the principal, and their job is to walk into meetings and say things like, I think we got to just let Trump be Trump, I mean, that's the key to all our messaging problems. Hope Hicks sounds like the greatest Trump enabler in the entire building, who would only give him good news, who could do no wrong in his eyes. She was not qualified before the campaign started. She's not qualified now. Saying that you tell little white lies for the President of the United States is an outrageous comment to provide to a House or Senate Oversight Committee.
I think it was House.
It was a House. So,
good riddance. That's pretty crazy. Also, I wonder if she's in some trouble too. I mean, Mueller, as the ultimate yes person to Donald Trump, and they're looking into obstruction. She was there helping with the statement that Trump tried to draft aboard Air Force One, saying that the meeting with Don Jr. and the Russians was actually about adoptions, which of course it was not.
Covering up for dumb Donald with his dad.
Yeah.
Donald Jr., excuse me.
So she could be in some trouble too.
She could be in some serious shit.
Well, anyway, we'll keep you up to date on that breaking news, because that's what we do. All right, so Josh Collins asks, what advice do you give to high school students like me who are considering walking out but might face consequences? He is, I imagine, referring to the national walkout that a lot of high school students are planning to protest gun violence and the failure of Congress to do anything about gun violence. I think it's in April 20th. I don't know. What do you think, Tommy?
I mean, this is easy to say and harder to do, but walk out. You know what? When you're 30 years from now, when you're thinking back about that day, you're not gonna remember what you learned in class. Remember if you stood up for something you care about.
Talk to your parents about it. See what they think. I know some schools
skip that step. Walk out.
Some schools superintendents have said 3-day suspension. Some have said it's okay.
It's 3 days off.
Yeah, you.
Cool.
Look, you have to figure out. You have to do what's right for you. But like, think about during the civil rights movement in the '60s, all those students who participated in the Montgomery bus boycotts, who sat at lunch counters. Like, students have led the way on a lot of these social movements forever. And it's not easy when you go do this and when you protest and when you boycott things. Like, there end up being consequences to it. And that's why you do it, to make it disruptive and because it's difficult. And so it's never going to be easy to do something like this. Yeah. There's always going to be consequences to it. But if it's really important to you and you believe in it, you should do it.
You know what, Josh Collins? You're a good guy. We support you no matter what you do.
Probably got him in trouble in advance now.
I won't say your trouble.
Oh, here we go, Tommy. Mm-hmm. Please spend. Stable Genius Megan asks, please spend a couple minutes dunking on perennial coward Marco Rubio and his dumb tweets. Absolutely. Oh, you know what? Someone said just do like a 30-minute Kushner burn too. Maybe we can do both of these right in a row.
We'll start with Marco.
Start with Marco. I have his tweet from this morning.
So I'd like to just start with why I hate Marco Rubio.
Great.
It's because he is the epitome of a politician who thinks that style trumps substance, and then he can walk in and be slick and be friendly, and that he deserves points for that in Washington. Look no further than the CNN town hall where he went. He seemed reasonable and empathetic and friendly, but then he would look these kids in the eye and tell them essentially that he would do nothing to stop gun violence, nothing to prevent further violence in their schools when they're telling them they're scared to go back to class. So he is a political coward. And worse, he's a political coward who thinks that his brand of politics, where you just have to be friendly, is somehow more important, and civility is somehow more important than what you actually do. And he complains when he's criticized by the media and by Democrats for his lack of action. And John, why are his claims for civility so ridiculous?
So this morning he tweeted, the debate after Parkland reminds us we the people don't really like each other very much. We smear those who refuse to agree with us. We claim a Judeo-Christian heritage but celebrate arrogance and boasting. And worst of all, we've infected the next generation with the same disease.
Smear?
First of all, what the fuck? I mean, what a downer from someone who's supposed to be a United States senator. He's also like attacking a whole generation of being like arrogant and boasting. But all that aside, Marco Rubio and his campaign spent a year in 2016 accusing Barack Obama of intentionally trying to destroy America, and then he made a bunch of dick jokes about Donald Trump on stage at a debate. So that's Marco Rubio.
Until he was until his career was ended on stage by Chris Christie, who has not turned out to be the most impressive politician of the bunch. So
Marco Rubio desperately wants to be viewed as someone who is reasonable, who is a solid Republican, but also listens to the other side and can bring the country together and is young and a new generation, except he has never taken any position or done any politics that reflect that desire to be seen as reasonable.
Yeah, the one time
you've got to do something to get to earn that reputation.
The one time he stepped out was on immigration reform, and he got slapped once by the right wing of the party, and he has never tried to do a goddamn thing since.
And that was the bravest thing he did.
Coward.
He actually did step out on immigration reform, and once he'd gotten slapped down, he said, "Fuck it, this is who I am," and then I wouldn't be saying any of this about him.
He's the John Edwards of the right. He sucks.
Yeah. Now, Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner's clearance, his top secret clearance, was downgraded by John Kelly to just secret. And what do we think? Things are not going well for Jared Kushner. There's also a great Washington Post story about how a bunch of countries were talking about how they could gain advantage over him.
This is such a power move by John Kelly. I respect the hell out of it. I mean, I've seen some people disagree with this, who were more directly involved in Middle East peace talks than I was. But I don't think that Jared can do his job without a top secret clearance. Like, secret level intel is diplomatic reporting, some military stuff, or like sanded down top secret information that kind of gets you the gist of it with hides all the details. Like, to have a top secret clearance, you can see intercepted communications and like really sensitive compartmented intelligence. to be the Middle East peace envoy, you need to see some really sensitive shit. And like the idea that Jared could be sent into a negotiation with some foreign person and not be able to see what intel we'd collected on that individual to know what they were going to do, say, what they were going to lie about is absurd to me. And he's also like, he's in the PDB all the time with Trump. He's this nebulous foreign policy advisor. He's supposed to do the China dialogue around economic issues and security issues. That's incredibly sensitive too. He's supposed to be managing our relationship with Mexico, which is not going very well. It's almost as if he shouldn't have
had any of these jobs in the first place.
Exactly. And so, like, to summarize, the Washington Post reported that there's intercepted communications of foreign governments saying they could manipulate Jared because of all his business interests that are out there.
Jared, he's in debt. He owes people money.
Jared, if he has a secret level clearance, wouldn't be allowed to read those intercepted communications. So, like, the whole thing doesn't really work anymore. Good night.
Bye, Jared.
Bye, Jared. You're done.
Okay. A light question. Out of Leo and Pundit, who does Luca get on best with and why?
Pundit is not nice to Luca. She growls at her no matter where she goes. She's really quite weird. Turfy.
Quite turfy.
Luca is very annoying to Leo. She follows him around like a little sister. And she tries to jump on him off of tall objects to play with him, and he doesn't always enjoy it. But
after a while,
he'll get into it. But she's annoying as shit.
And Leo just sort of stands there as Luca just jumps all over him. But it works out. Why is I did not come up with this? Is from an account that's not mine. Why is John Lovett destroying his reputation as a straight shooter by blaming Leo for all the barking during ad reads? I don't know. I think it's very sad.
Many people are asking that.
Many people are asking that question. That was one question, but we had like a dozen like that. So I don't know. We'll have to ask Lovett himself.
When he's done with his bad Pokeball.
How can we help engage? Colleen Souza asked, how can we help engage, harness, cultivate the budding political interest of young people in the never again metoo climate? This is from a high school civics teacher. That's an excellent question.
That's good.
We were just talking about this actually before the live stream, you and I. Yeah. That, like this, when the students from Parkland sort of run up against the realities, the political realities of the Republican-controlled legislature in Florida and the Republican-controlled Congress in D.C. potentially not doing anything about guns. We were saying we were worried, like, what will they do next?
Yeah, these kids are amazing, and what they've built in like a week or two, and the way they've channeled an experience that is more horrific than anything I could imagine is unbelievable. And like, I'm proud of them. I admire them. I like look up to what they're doing. It's like truly impressive. But I'm still worried for them about the way political debates allow people to be their most cruel, evil selves. You're already seeing this with people like criticizing them if there's photos of them smiling or looking happy, as if they need to be in mourning until we tell them not to be. Like, fuck you. So I'm worried about the harshness of their response and like how hard it is to be in the political arena. So like, I don't know, my advice to them would be like, prepare yourself for the long haul, ignore the worst people in the world, and like just keep organizing and reaching out to like-minded people and focus on the midterm elections, because that's where we're going to get stuff done.
That last point I think is really important. I think the story of 2017 and now 2018 is there's a lot of enthusiasm and energy from people who rightly are terrified of Donald Trump as president, and especially among young people who've never been involved in politics before, and they're thinking, how can I help? And whether you care about the Me Too movement, where you care about gun control, whether it's climate change, whether it's college, whatever it is, I think connecting these students, connecting these young people with politics, and I understand, like, a lot of people look at politics and like, it's terrible, like, rightly so, it's awful. Why would I want to get involved in politics? I'll just be part of my student movement. But the only way to actually change things is through our political system, and you've got to elect people who are going to fight for the things that you believe in. And if they're not going to, then you go run yourself and run for office. Yeah. And I think that, if you're a teacher, letting kids know and letting your students know that the ultimate way to change things is through the political system, through movements outside the political system, pressuring the political system, but ultimately voting and running for office yourself. I think that's important.
Here's one. Do advertisers ever call to yell at you?
Not really. Man.
We almost got fired a couple times.
Yeah, there's a few here and there. Mostly they are pretty great though.
It's often through an intermediary who
Yeah,
I
right.
think sort of sands down the rage and relays it to us in a constructive way.
Yeah.
We try to
Look,
be
I don't
nice
think we
back.
should be making fun of any of the products. I don't have to tell you. Speaking to the choir here.
As I wear my Stitch Fix shirt and stare into the camera.
Dick's Sporting Goods
Cool.
statement and their decision to stop selling semi-automatic weapons and raise the age of sales to 21. It's not really a question. I guess this, Liz just wants us to comment on this. Yeah, great. Good for Dick's Sporting Goods.
Good for dicks.
There you go. That's all we have to say. Anything else? Let's see. Is Tommy drinking a Budweiser?
No, this is Diet Coke. It's a new label.
That's it. I think that's it, guys.
Cool.
Is that all we have? All right.
Let's go read about Hope Hicks.
Thanks for your questions. Yeah, we're gonna go.
Breaking news.
We're gonna go read about Hope Hicks, and we'll be on the Twitter. Bye, guys.
Bye. Come on, Leo.